And good day, everybody. This is Z Marcel Portute, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. We're recording this on March 25th, 2020, live and local in Atlanta, Georgia. Hope all is well with you. We're dealing with some trying times, and we'll discuss some of those in relation to the world of sports, especially in the NFL. Hope all of you are being safe out there, taking your precautions, and I'm sure as I talk through this show and as we broadcast, I'll go through my personal experiences. I'm fine. Everything is good here, doing the self-isolation thing as much as I can, but I still have to walk out of the house and go to the store. But here in Atlanta, things are kind of changing. Not as bad as it seems around the world, wherever you're listening at, especially if you're in the New York State and Washington State. Really all states. I think it's getting to the point where New York is going through it right now in the state of Washington, but we're all going to probably be at a point of major issues. But we'll try to discuss sports, and you can't avoid the coronavirus, and that'll be the first segment of the show. I'll discuss the impact it has on our sports. There's some cancellation and changes to the schedules of some major sports and athletic endeavors, and we'll touch on that first. Then we'll go into the NFL specifically. The NFL is still going on. Have free agency, trades, draft preparations. The draft is, I think, exactly 1 month from today or around that time. So we'll delve into that, from Tom Brady to Jameis Winston, Cam Newton, all of those things as well. But as always, we want to follow everything that we're doing. Head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net, premier site for news and notes in the world of sports. You're able to see our archives before the coronavirus really affected our sports calendar. We have content from Georgia State basketball, Georgia Tech basketball, Atlanta United, and things along those lines. So make sure you check out our site and see everything that we're doing there. On Twitter and Instagram, you can go to Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Any updates that we have go directly to those social media platforms. So make sure that you subscribe to us on them. And that's at Sports Inquirer. That's all one word. Facebook, you go to either one of our two pages. Sports Inquirer, that's all one word, or The Sports Inquirer, 3 separate words. Head to either one of those pages, similar deal. You'll get everything that we're doing. And finally, subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. And we will enjoy, or we appreciate, the subscription and likes of our content on there. And that really helps us in our endeavors as well. So make sure you go to all of those sites and make sure you see what we are doing. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to delve into coronavirus's impact on the world of sports and our daily lives here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, welcome back to Sports Inquirer Show. Marcel Portute here with you. I think when I talk about this segment or this portion of the show, I'll go micro with myself personally, and I think once I do that, it'll kind of translate into the macro of the sports world. Here personally at Sports Inquirer, if you've been on our site, you know that we're Atlanta-based. So we cover a lot of the sports, except the Braves, with some issues there. No, we like the Braves. But actually, we're trying to do some more Braves stuff with spring training, which would have ended right around now, and then started the regular season. But you know that we cover a lot of Metro Atlanta sports, and that translates really into the broad spectrum of what we do. Great examples, Atlanta United. We go to the practices. We are able to attend the games, go to the pressers, get interviews, sometimes exclusive ones, and are able to broadcast those on our site and present them to you. Well, Atlanta United and the MLS, they're suspended 30 days technically as we're recording this right now. We're in the middle of that, but I'm assuming it's going to extend even longer, probably throughout the month of April. What that means is that there are no practices, there are no games or no matches, hence no practices. So you look at our site, there's a lack of Atlanta United content because there are no practices. We're unable to talk to manager Frank DeBoer or to the players or go to the matches. And the team would have been in the middle of the MLS season. They're in the CONCACAF Champions League. So they would have been able to do all of that stuff. And we would have been there and gotten some great content for you, some great write-ups, previews, all of that stuff. Well, that's not happening. So since that's done, we're not able to do any activities. Similar to college athletics, we're going to delve more into, we're wrapping up basketball season. Georgia Tech and Georgia State basketball, those wrapped up for us. But with the cancellation of the NCAA tournament, including the NIT and the CBI tournament and things along those lines, those Georgia programs could have been in some postseason tournament activity, especially Georgia State men's basketball, which you do a lot of stuff with. Therefore, we don't have any content from them, from the practices to the games, all of that stuff. So that really limits a lot what we're trying to do. And it pales in comparison to people literally losing their lives to the coronavirus and having their lives hampered or altered in a major way. People are dying, and it's a really bad situation. But in the sports world, we've seen some major cancellations. In the golf world, the Masters was canceled, which I thought would never happen under many circumstances. The Olympics, that was the latest news that we heard on March 24th, is that they are postponed until 2021. They're supposed to be in Japan this July. So when you have those cancellations, those major deals, so you're seeing the sports world being affected by that. A lot of alternatives of what we're trying to do as far as presenting content. I'm not trying to go to the nostalgia route of the greatest of all time, like the list and reflections. I don't like those type of shows personally, because a lot of times I lived through it or I know about it already. So I listen to some shows and they're trying to go that route, or with the list of your Mount Rushmore of the greatest coaches or players, or your top 64 players in history of the league now, or the sport. We're not a daily show, so luckily we're in that regard. I can not relate to that, especially on the local side of things. My local sports brethren on the sports talk stations, you could tell they're really struggling trying to find content. NFL's doing a good job, and that's at our next segment. We'll break down deeper the NFL, specifically the offseason moves. So that's been a nice little thing to hold on to as far as real sports news and activity. But outside of that, it really is a major shutdown, and it's something that we're going to have to adjust to. The unfortunate part as well, like myself personally, I'm a freelancer, so I have no work going on right now, and that's going to hurt the finances in the near future. I have to find alternative means to find funds because there are no games going on, therefore I can't report on them. So I know my freelancers out there, all of us, we are really going to be hurting. Some of us are hurting right now, and it's going to get worse over time. So that's the unfortunate thing. And a lot of my other people that we don't even think about, that we cross paths with all the time, the security, concessions, all my media relations people, all of my contacts. Now, I know the teams and the colleges are probably going to try to help them out in some regard, but a lot of your work is through games, through activities. And the spring period is very, very active. As I mentioned, the colleges, it's the busiest time there. NBA and NHL, the playoffs are right around the corner. We're kind of heading towards the end of the regular season, heading to the playoffs. That's been altered. Major League Baseball, the spring training was canceled or postponed. The regular season has been pushed back to start of it. So you look at all those things, it's really a major struggle in that regard. And then lastly, I look at the athletes themselves, and the college athletes specifically. Professionally, there's some tough breaks for them, but they're compensated and they'll move on and adjust in their various ways. I look at the college and high school athletes. You only have an X amount of eligibility with you, especially on the high school level, because I cover high school sports specifically, and this is a busy time here in Georgia. We have men's and women's soccer, baseball, tennis, men's and women, golf. All those sports are taking place right now. Lacrosse are in the spring calendar, and they are done. So if you're a senior, your year is over. And some sports were literally just starting out within the past week or two. Basketball finished up earlier in the month of March. So we were transitioning into baseball, into all those other sports that were still in non-region play. They weren't even halfway through their regular seasons, let alone the playoffs in the state of Georgia. So those are all done, and that's really bad for those athletes. I feel for those, especially those seniors who are not going to they're going to go to college, or they're going to move on to their next endeavors in life. They're not going to stick around for another year of high school sports. That's finished. That's wrapped up. And on the college side, it's a tricky deal. And I was talking to an assistant coach at one of the local programs here in the metro Atlanta for basketball. I know the plan is to try to give people an extra year of eligibility, especially on the spring sports side. Spring sports definitely, because they didn't start out yet really in essence. But what about the winter sports that transitioned over, particularly in basketball? The NCAA tournament hadn't started yet, but you can't say this team would have been in the postseason, so all those seniors on that squad should have been given extra year of eligibility because they have not determined if they were in the tournament, in men and women. A lot of teams, and I'll specifically Kennesaw State, that's our most local team that we cover. They did not qualify. They had their regular seasons. They played their Atlantic Sun tournaments, and they're done. And neither one of those teams would not get an at-large bid, most likely, to the NCAA tournament. So their season was over. Do they get a extra year of eligibility in comparison to, you look at the men's side, we'll say Kansas, who was probably going to be a number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament on the men's side. What about those athletes? They probably would have moved on and played some more games. They get an extra year. It's very confusing as far as that goes. How do you handle scholarships? As far as if you're a coach, especially with a sport where you give partial scholarships, I'm looking at sports like baseball and softball and tennis, where it's not the full scholarship, it's half scholarship, a quarter, things along those lines. You expected to graduate, let's say in baseball, you expected to graduate or have 7 players move on after this season. You signed a recruiting class of 7 or 8. What happens now that these guys get extra year of eligibility and those graduating seniors want to come back for another year, yet you have this class of 6 or 7 that already are committed to the program and have signed their athletic scholarship, their letters of intent. A lot of them already signed already. How do you handle all of that stuff in that transition? So those are things that have to be answered and resolved. And I know it's causing there's bigger issues going on right now with the virus. It's to the point now where after we record the show, I'm probably going to head to my Walmart or my Target. I'll try to pick up some equipment show related. But outside of those stores and in your Publix and your Kroger or whatever your local supermarket is, wherever you're listening to this, everything else is shut down. Some fast food places are open, like your McDonald's and your Wendy's and things like that. But if you're looking to go to the gym, like I like to do quite a bit, my gym's been shut down. If I want to walk around in the park, we have a great park here I live in Kennesaw Ackworth area. We're based in Atlanta, but where I live, there's a nice park with a nice trail and things you can walk around in. I can't even do that now. I have to walk around in my neighborhood to get my daily exercise. It's really altering our lifestyles in a major way. So having athletes and wins and losses pale in comparison to the alternatives that we have to do, and especially on the federal government side, and seeing the pressers of President Trump and Governor Cuomo from New York and the politicians bickering, and when we have some major issues going on, and seeing the politics really in a dirty light on both sides, Democrat and Republican. You see all of that, and then you're trying to worry about the tennis tournament. It kind of pales in comparison, but it really is affecting a lot of things that we're doing in our lives. So it's a moving target. It's a fluid situation. It's evolving, and we're going to be here to try to discuss everything that's going on and how it relates to our lives. So that's an update on coronavirus and its impact that it's having on our daily lives. And when we come back, we're going to go to our second and final segment of the show, the Zone's Blitz portion, where we discuss NFL free agency and trades here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, welcome back to the Sports Inquirer Show. Imar Silpertut here speaking with you, and welcome to the next segment portion of the show, the Zone Blitz, NFL free agency. Some news has gone down since we last recorded our show last week, so I'm going to touch on some of those notes and give my thoughts on them and what's been going on. The Atlanta Falcons, a local team here that we cover, has been very active on the free agency market. They signed 2 major players that they hope have big contributions to the team. Dante Fowler signed a 3-year deal worth up to $48 million with the Falcons. I think they need you look at the moves. Vic Beasley, he's moved on to the Tennessee Titans. They're disappointed in the production they've gotten from their pass rush, from Takk McKinley as well. So they want to get another guy in there. Fowler in his mid-20s. Had a very strong year with the Los Angeles Rams last year, double-digit sacks. Now playing next to Aaron Donald is a big factor or help in that cause. They figure Grady Jarrett can have that as big of an impact as Donald did for Dante Fowler, but a guy who 3-year deal, $48 million, not the worst contract for an edge rusher, especially if you get double-digit sacks. You can look at it in a way, it's $1 million per sack. So if you get that kind of production, that'll be very solid for the Falcons. And Todd Gurley, he signed a 1-year deal with $6 million, and he could receive a bonus. Actually, here's the breakdown of it. There's a lot of language in it. So he signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with the Falcons. He's going to receive a bonus of $7.5 million from the Rams, and there is a $2.5 million offset. So in total, Gurley is going to get $11 million to play in 2020. But out of pocket for the Falcons is 1 year, $6 million. I think it's an okay move. They moved on from Devonta Freeman, who I believe, as we're recording this show on March 25th, is still a free agent. They lacked production from the running back position. You bring in Todd Gurley, one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, but the past few years, especially the last 2 years, has been dealing with injury issues or regression. We don't know if it's a major injury or if it's arthritis, deterioration of the knee ligaments. We don't know what the story is with him, but you look at that situation, the Rams decided to move on. They ate some of the money, and now he is a Falcon. It's a 1-year deal. So even if he underperforms and underwhelms, it's not the worst deal in the world for the Falcons. I expect them to still take a running back in the draft just to have some depth. I know Ito Smith is I don't want to say popular, but a solid performer for the Falcons, and the supporters seem to like him. But you can't go into a season just with Todd Gurley and Smith as your running backs. You're going to get another guy in there and see what happens. So I think those moves, when you go in free agency, big, and it is semi-big for the Falcons. I think it's an indictment in a way of how you've not addressed your needs in the draft. If your perfect team, or as much of a perfect team as you can have, you want to have a strong draft-based team because the salaries are lower. You re-sign your guys. There's continuity there. And free agency, the numbers are inflated so much because you're competing with 31 other teams or 4 or 5 other teams for a man's services. So that drives up the price. So you look at Fowler, the disappointing picks of Beasley and Takk McKinley has led the Falcons to go and pick up Dante Fowler in a deal which I said is not the worst in the world, but still that's money that you could have allotted to other positions. You look at Gurley, Devonta Freeman, who had a solid start to his career but did not perform well towards the end. You signed him to a big contract, and you had to move on from that. So now you have to get Todd Gurley. And I said these deals are not that bad, but you're looking at the signings that the Falcons have made between, I said, with Fowler and Gurley and bringing in Hayden Hurst, the tight end from the Ravens. It's to the point where it is a win-now situation for the Falcons, and that's understandable. Matt Ryan is over 35 years old. Julio Jones is in his 30s. Your two best players are at that age where their peaks are either current or they're about to end. And you have a coaching staff, which is on a 1-year deal. You brought back Dan Quinn, the head coach. You brought back Thomas Dimitroff, the general manager. Disappointing year last year. Very bad beginning. You end up winning your last few games to get to 7-9, and you're pretty much on the clock. Owner Arthur Blank has pretty much said that this is the year where it has to be marked improvement or it's going to be a cleaning of the house. And you look at these moves, and that reflects that. So, as I said, I think numbers-wise, they're not the worst deals in the world, but you got to have a solid draft. And as I've said with the Falcons, for so many years now, line play has to improve on both sides of the ball in a major way. You drafted 2 rookie offensive linemen last year. Hopefully they come in this year with more experience and can stay healthy. You hope you have a bounce-back year from Takk McKinley. Grady Jarrett, Pro Bowl player. He's doing his thing. but you got to get better play, and that's where maybe Fowler can help. And then Gurley with the running game, if you're able to get more consistent run activity or run contributions to your rushing attack, I think that can help the passing game. It can help the scoring as well for the Falcons. So those moves they made, and we'll see what happens there. Melvin Gordon, 2-year deal with the Denver Broncos for $16 million, $13.5 million guaranteed. I think this deal's been knocked by some people. I don't mind it at all. I know they have Lindsey there, who's been a Pro Bowl player, running back for the past 2 years for the Broncos, but you can never have enough running back and I think Gordon's going to do a solid job. He had a rough go of it with the Chargers at the end of his tenure there. Remember last season he held out for several regular season games and then came back right at the deadline to get a full year of service. And you could tell that he was unable to get into the flow of his 2019 campaign. And then furthermore, I think that you have the Chargers maybe not wanting to give him bulk of carries to reach incentives and to play well just because on the holdout. I think there's some bitterness there. So he moves on, plays with Denver. I think that's a solid move for the Broncos overall. And once again, 2-year deal, $13.5 million guaranteed. That's really what we look at, the guaranteed money. So you're looking at for a 1,000-yard rusher, if he's healthy and it gets right, less than $7 million per year. That's not great, but not bad either. So I like that move. I think it was solid overall. I'm surprised Jadaveon Clowney is still on the open market. His asking price, I think, has been very high, probably close to $20 million per year and some high guarantees. I think his inconsistency as far as getting sacks, you saw him play last year, only had 3 sacks with the Seattle Seahawks last season. I know he's a solid run stopper and things like that, but he's asking for money that with that, the Aaron Donald, the J.J. Watt type money, or asking for more than that, and he's not giving the production. Furthermore, he's been hampered by injuries. He had the core injury that hurt him last year, or has hurt him in the past. He's dealt with leg injuries also. I think him, and we'll get to another guy that's probably not going to be signed for a while due to the coronavirus. You have to have your trainers look at this guy extensively. I know that they have probably virtual reports, and Clowney and his doctor is probably saying he's a good, clean bill of health. You have to have your own guys look at him and give the seal of approval. I'm interested to see what the Falcons, and I don't know if the physical's been done yet. I said because of our current state, maybe delay. The deal was announced with Todd Gurley, but it would not surprise me if he struggles passing that physical with that knee or with his previous injuries. We'll see what happens there, but I think with Clowney, it's the same deal. I think he might get a solid deal, but if I'm an owner of a team or general manager, I have to have him in my offices to look at what he's going to do for me physically. That's the biggest issue. I don't think it's a mental issue. I don't think he has a bad attitude or he's a bad player in that regard. I just physically have to look at the man and see what's going on there. And that's what's the deal with him is. Tom Brady signed with the Bucs. We discussed it on our last show, but I will go over it again because the numbers are actually out. 2 years, $50 million. So that means he got $42 million guaranteed, and the $8 million in incentives, which he'll make. Unless he suffers a catastrophic injury, he'll get to that. So we'll just say 2 years, $50 million. So $25 million per year. It was not the $30 million that if he makes an incentive, 2 years, $50 million, so it's $25 million guaranteed per year, and $8 million in incentives. So if he makes those, and he'll probably get some other kickbacks as well, he'll get to his 2 years and $60 million. He's going to have to work for it a little bit. But on paper, 2 years, $50 million, that's not bad at all. The Patriots could have matched that easily with their salary, and then you see him cutting Gronkowski, the kicker. They could have made that money, or they could have offered Brady that type of contract. As I said in the last show, I think the Patriots pulled a classic move. They gave a low ball offer so they could say that they offered Tom Brady a contract. He, below his market value, he turned it down, and he moved on to the Buccaneers. And two things on that, and then we'll discuss Brady more because that's the biggest story in the offseason in the NFL. First thing is, I've seen some Patriots fans be mad at Tom Brady. How dare you be mad at a man that played 19 seasons, 20 years with the organization, started 19 seasons, went to 9 Super Bowls and won 6 championships, highly regarded as the greatest quarterback of all time, took pay cuts throughout his career, especially the second half of his tenure with your team, it's the greatest dynasty in history of the NFL and the longest tenure, something that we'll probably never, ever see again. And I see Patriots fans mad at Tom Brady. That is so disrespectful, and I just don't get it at all. Look, we get attached to athletes in our hometowns if you're a fan of a team, but it's also business, and you have to see that reality in that business. Would it be great if Tom Brady played his entire career with the Patriots? Absolutely. And I think both sides at some point wanted that to happen. But between Bill Belichick's probably decision to want to move on and looking at the grand picture of the team rebuilding and trying to move on to another transitional part of the team, Brady's not part of those plans. Brady probably wanted to move on to play at another organization, and Tampa offers some benefits. A quarterback-friendly head coach, Bruce Arians, playing in a warm weather in the Southeast with a talented roster, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and he decided to make that move. And I just don't think that there's need to have malice towards Tom Brady from Patriot fans and supporters. That surprised me, reading and viewing some of these people that are mad at Tom Brady. I just don't get that at all. You just have to realize that it's a business, and it's time to move on. And then Bob Kraft, very slick by him, the owner of the Patriots, talking about all this stuff of we love Tom and he's the greatest, and I consider him like a son, and taking out full-page ads in Boston newspapers. He could have taken care of all of this, superseded Bill Belichick, offered that same type of money to Tom Brady, and he'd still be a New England Patriot. So it's interesting to see Bob Kraft, the owner, kind of taking a back seat or trying to pass the blame along, if you want to call it blame, of Tom Brady moving on to another team. You're the owner, Bob Kraft. You could have made that deal happen. You could have superseded Belichick like he did with the Jimmy Garoppolo deal, where he wanted to get rid of Brady earlier and elevate Garoppolo to starting position. That didn't happen. You decided to keep Brady, and you won a championship afterwards, which is nothing to ignore. But you traded Garoppolo all the way across the country to San Francisco. So you have the power. It's your team to sign off on anything. And if you wanted Brady to come back for another season, that could have happened. So interesting to see how Bob Kraft is taking that road with Tom Brady. Where does New England go from here? As far as quarterback goes, Brian Hoyer, he signed the deal for 1 year with Patriots. That's really in a backup role. I think Jarrett Stidham has a chance to be a starter. I think he's going to have an opportunity to start for the team. Obviously, Bill Belichick has seen him for an entire year now. We saw him do it with Tom Brady. Now, I don't know if Brady expect Stidham to have the type of career Tom Brady has is impossible, and no one's going to have that type of career probably again in history in the NFL unless something big happens or drastic changes, just the way the league is structured right now. But you look at the quarterback options. Do you go with Cam Newton? Do you go with Jameis Winston? And then we'll get to those guys specifically in a moment. Andy Dalton, he still has 1 year, I believe, left with the Bengals, but they're probably going to draft a quarterback number 1 overall in the upcoming draft. There's no need for Andy Dalton to be there for that. So you look at your choices, and I think Belichick is going to take his time and let things play out. Because outside, and you look at the other teams, they've made their moves. Carolina, they've signed Teddy Bridgewater. They made that choice. Look at Chicago. They acquired Nick Foles in a trade. That might have been an interesting choice for Belichick. He's in Chicago now. You look at the Chargers. They signed Mariota to probably be the backup to Carr, or maybe they compete for the starting position. We never know there. So you look at all of these spots of guys or these teams. Only the Chargers, they're in the top 5. I think they picked 5th or 6th in the draft. They're probably going to be in the trusted trade. They're going to be in the spot to pick a quarterback in their first round there, whether it's Love out of Utah State or Herbert out of Oregon. So the quarterback spot, there aren't too many other teams that are going to be looking for a starter if you look around and just look at the mathematics of it. So New England can bide their time. They can wait for Cam Newton. They can wait for Jameis Winston until all of this stuff settles, bring them in, and look at them. And I mentioned the second guy. I talked about Jadaveon Clowney, having my doctors look at him. Similar deal with Cam Newton. I think the thing with Cam Newton, and people are kind of confused by why the Panthers would release him with 1 year left on his deal after the Teddy Bridgewater acquisition. I think it's twofold. You look at Cam and the Cam show and what it means to him or what it brings. We joke about the outfits and the Instagram videos, him with the cigars and all that stuff. I think the Panthers with Rivera, they grew up with Cam and Rivera grew up together. It was part of it. Ron Rivera, the former head coach. The team knew about him and the previous ownership with Richardson, all that stuff. That was part of Carolina and Cam and everything like that. You have a new owner. You have Matt Rule, a new head coach, 7-year deal for a large amount of money. They want to turn the page on the Cam Newton era. I think for two reasons. One, I think the Cam represents the previous era, and his attitude, his approach to things, it's going to be different. Teddy Bridgewater is not going to bring the antics that Cam Newton brings to the table, whether they're good or bad. The attitude, the sulkiness, just the Cam show. I think they want to move on from that and go to a new era, and that happens in all of our jobs, wherever you're listening. Whoever's listening to the show, I'm sure if you played athletics, a new coach comes in, they want to bring in their own people. You might be cut or see your playing time reduced. Whatever job you're at, a new boss comes in or your company's acquired and new policies come in and you might not mesh with them. So what happens in real life, it happened with the Panthers. So I think that's the first thing. And then second thing, and the more important thing, his health. He cannot stay on the field consistently anymore. And you saw his style of play. He was running around, doing all those things early in his career and starting to catch up with them. Shoulder injuries, offseason foot surgery. I can't rely on him to be on the field healthy and consistently. If his health was better, sure. You can convince me and say, hey, 1 year deal, it's a show or go, make or break campaign for him. You give a 1 year look-see, and then if you decide to move on, you'd move on. But I just don't think he's going to be able to put together a 16-game campaign for you. And now 17 games when that new CBA kicks in. I don't think he's going to be able to give you a full season on the field just with his injuries. And he's never been the most consistent player even when healthy. The ups and downs. I'm talking on the field, not the off-field stuff. Very inaccurate passer, or not inaccurate's not. I'll say very inaccurate, inconsistent. Some years he's in the 60s and maybe the low 70s if he's lucky. A lot of times he's in the 50s as far as passing accuracy. That's not going to work even if he stays healthy in this type of play in the NFL in 2020. So I think you look at all of that stuff and it's time to move on. Same thing with Jameis Winston with Tampa. He threw for 5,000 yards. 30-plus touchdowns, you look at that, that's very good. 30-plus interceptions, not very good. Fumbles. You can't have a quarterback playing like that. And I know that Winston said he got LASIK surgery, got his eyesight improved. I got to see it to believe it. So you look at those two guys for various reasons. I have to look at them eye to eye. And with Newton, I have to get that physical and check his medicals before I even approach signing him to a deal. Winston, I have to see what his attitude is. Is he willing to be a backup? He's been a starter everywhere he's been. Going back to college, Florida State, national champion. You go to the NFL, day one, starting at Tampa, ups and downs. And he's still in his mid-20s, so it's not like he's old news. So he has some years left in him. Is he willing to go into my program and be a backup and not sulk and complain? Cam Newton, same deal. He's a very popular figure with a very big social media and a big presence in general. Is he willing to hold the clipboard and be a backup with my program? I just don't see that with those two guys right now. Or at least not talking with them. So I look at it from a management perspective. Would I be willing to go there? I don't know. So that's where, especially with a guy like Bill Belichick, it's not going to be through a Skype conversation or a Facebook Live or, through FaceTime. He's not going to do all that. He's going to want to have the guy in the facility one-on-one and see what happens there. So I think those guys, and similar to Clowney, are going to have to wait a little bit as we record this show, as I said, on March 25th. Now, tomorrow, all three might be signed to a team. I don't know, but I think that's what you're kind of looking at there. Let's see. And we'll end on Darius Slay signing with the Philadelphia Eagles, acquired in a trade with the Lions in exchange for a third-round pick and a fifth-round pick. Now, as part of that deal, Slay does receive a 3-year, $50 million extension, $30 million guaranteed. So technically it's a trade, but I kind of look at it as a little bit of free agency, but there are some draft picks involved. Look, if I'm Slay, he signed a deal, or he's on a new team on a much better team. You go from Detroit, one of the 5 worst teams in the NFL, to Philadelphia, which is a legit Super Bowl contender, and you got an extension. You got G'd up financially. It's a beautiful time for you. His beef or things about Matt Patricia, I don't know if it's necessarily a surprise, but time to move on from that. Now, he did state it, and he talked about it and said that Patricia had a very condescending attitude towards him and the team in general. I understand that, and I know Patricia comes to that Bill Belichick tree in the Patriots way, and that doesn't translate necessarily well to other programs when you're the head man yourself. I get all of that, but just take the money, accept it, be happy you're in a better situation, and don't let that affect you in that regard. Patricia, I didn't like the hiring in the beginning. Anytime you're a defensive coordinator and you still have Belichick as the head guy and you go to a program saying, I was a DC, not necessarily. Bill Belichick is the defense coordinator of the Patriots. Now, he has guys. His son actually started calling plays, I think, this year, but it's best Belichick's baby. Now, offensively, you look at the way things ran in the Brady era, Josh McDaniels and Brady, the offensive coordinator, and Brady, those guys are pretty much the OCs and did their thing. Now, Belichick is a football savant. I mean, he's been a quarterback coach. He's coached every level, and he's the greatest coach of all time. So I'm not saying that he just handed the offensive reins over to McDaniels, had no input on the offensive game plan. But I'm saying Belichick's most of his career has been on the defensive end. So that's his baby. So Matt Patricia coming in trying to say, oh, I'm the defensive guy. No, you're not. And I know that Darius Slay, the cornerback, so they had a lot of interactions and issues there. As I said, just take the money and run and live your life. And that's concluded today's show. Thanks for listening. As always, head to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. For news and notes in the world of sports, you can head to our other sites, such as Twitter and Instagram, under Sports Inquirer, all one word. Facebook, our 2 pages on there, The Sports Inquirer and Sports Inquirer. And subscribe to us on YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. As always, good fight, good night, and be safe.